Welcome back, everybody, to the Casual Hookup Sports Podcast, Episode 3. From right to left across your radio dial, I am Jack Norman, coming to you live from a sun-drenched Lansing, Michigan. To my left, I have Ashton Rodebeck, and to the left of him, we have Ralph Garber. We have a loaded slate in college football this weekend to get to. Incredible week. We saw 3 separate field stormings. I mean, shake up in the top 5, top 10, all over the place. I think we got to start with the game of the week, probably. Tennessee, the number 1 team in the country, traveling to Athens, Georgia, to face the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs, guys. The Georgia defense really was the story in this game. Holding Hendon Hooker to under 200 yards passing, that was really the story of this game. I feel like the final score was not indicative of the way this game played out. I feel like Georgia was really in control from the opening kickoff till the final whistle.
Absolutely. I think Tennessee scored in garbage time to make that game look a lot closer than it actually was. And, maybe these Tennessee offenses kind of frauds from what we thought they were. I mean, Jalen Hyatt and Hendon Hooker weren't hooking up like we usually expect them to. The Georgia secondary, who we were talking about was going to be the key, factor to this game, performed at a very high level. Kelly Ringo getting an interception, throughout that game. The Georgia's defense looks as elite, if not, on the same caliber as last year's team. They look phenomenal.
Got to give that Georgia offense some respect, too. Stetson Bennett is him. At the end of the day, he is delivered all season for them. Brock Bowers is a monster. They were really getting it done against that Tennessee defense as well. I mean, and I think I can speak for us all when we thought that Tennessee would have a much, much better performance after beating Alabama. We thought that they'd be able, that was kind of their, they arrived moment. They slayed the dragon of Bama. Can they come into Georgia and do the same thing and really prove themselves that they belong in the playoff picture? And they did not. It was far from it. They're actually very disappointing on Saturday.
I agree. We were definitely looking to watch that Georgia secondary. They really had not been tested all season, and they answered the bell in a big-time way. Freshman Malachi Starks, he was, one of the bright lights shining on their defense, leading the Bulldogs with 10 tackles. Obviously, you touched on Keely Ringo's big-time interception. We all remember him from the national championship game, the hero that sealed the game pretty much. But I also wanted to touch on Georgia. They had a couple linebackers out in this game, Nolan Smith and then Robert Beal. He went out in the third quarter of that game. But really, it was just like, it's similar to what Nick Saban's run has kind of been at Alabama. We're kind of seeing a similar thing with Kirby Smart at Georgia, I feel like. They're kind of creating their own dynasty in Athens, it seems like.
You got to respect Kirby Smart. I mean, you just have to at the end of the day.
I mean, they shout out to Georgia and their athletic department having faith. This is Kirby Smart's 6th year at Georgia. It took 5 years for them to finally get over the hump, per se, win the national championship, beat Alabama, move forward, and at this point it looks like it's paying off. I mean, Georgia looks phenomenal. I mean, they have so many things going right for them. They're putting themselves in the driver's seat to be the heads of college football for years coming. If you're a recruit, why wouldn't you want to go to Georgia at this point? I mean, it right now it is the highest of high caliber football programs in the country.
What did they have the most players drafted on defense? Or was it?
Oh,
I don't know the exact stat. They had the most players drafted on one side of the ball in the first round.
I believe it was.
Draft?
I believe it was 8 players. I believe in the first round.
And they just reloaded too. Like their defense looks like they lost
nothing.
Nothing.
They look phenomenal.
They had Hendon Hooker on his back 6 times in the game yesterday. He was
total
sacked
sacks.
6 times.
They held Tennessee to. What was it? Under 100 yards rushing, 2.2 yards per carry. That's not going to get it done. Anybody.
That's why we talked about that Georgia secondary. But let's not forget about the front guys, because I mean, holy shit, putting him on his back 6 times, the run game being essentially non-existent. I mean, Georgia's defense looks locked and loaded and ready to go, facing the highest caliber offense in the country and shutting them down.
They're kind of peaking at the right time in Georgia.
Truthfully, I mean, those pass rushers make the secondary job a lot easier. They're not having to guard these guys for as long as they would if that there was no pressure toward the quarterback.
Absolutely.
So 6 sacks in this game made guys like Keely Ringo's job a lot easier.
Yeah, Jalen Carter played a big game for Georgia.
Truthfully.
And like you were saying, we're kind of, maybe getting to the end of Nick Saban's run at Alabama. We'll get to that a little bit more later, but I think Georgia, they're putting themselves in good position.
For sure.
They look good.
Yeah, they look very good. Let's move on a little bit here to, man, we got to talk about what happened in South Bend, Indiana. Man.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
Final.
absolutely.
Notre Dame 35, number 4 Clemson 14. I did not see this one coming. In
No.
this fashion, I think Notre Dame was up 28-zip in the third quarter. That really put the game away on a pick six, 96-yard pick 6
96 yards.
from DJU.
Uyunglele.
Yeah,
They got to figure out the quarterback situation
Yeah.
over there in Clemson. I mean, you got to put the guy in that's going to give you the best chance to win ball games, and DJ has proven that he is not that guy. I feel like if you're Dabo Swinney, you got to give Cade Klubnik the keys, let him operate. I mean, at this point, you just lost a game that you really needed if you wanted to, make a push to that playoff. It's going to be a cluster of one-loss teams fighting for that 4 spot, and I don't know if Clemson's going to have a great case to fit into that 4 spot, especially with some of the other teams that are fighting for it.
Yeah, well, in strength of teams, too. I mean, Clemson on paper should never have lost this football game. This football game should have been well in control for Clemson, especially with a high-caliber running back like Will Shipley. I mean, honestly, they didn't even have a whole lot of success running the ball, yesterday.
Shipley 63 yards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not what you would expect to see out of him. And and let's not forget about this Clemson defense. We talk about how elite this Clemson defense has been, and how they're what's been carrying this Clemson run this year, and allowing 35 points. I mean, granted, one was obviously a pick 6, but 28 points, essentially unanswered for most of the game. I mean, that's unacceptable as an elite top 5 defense. You can't be having that happen.
Yeah, the Notre Dame running game really stood out. They rushed for 260 yards on that that Clemson defense, like you were saying. They had 200-yard rushers, Audric Estime and Logan Diggs. They both were over the century mark. Both helped lead the Irish to victory. They played a terrific game, both of them.
I mean, huge for them, especially being down in the quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, guys stepping up big when they're really needed.
Yeah, Drew Pine was the starting QB, and I think he didn't even pass for 100 yards. He passed for 85 yards, and they still won convincingly.
Absolutely.
Clemson kind of beat themselves in that game.
Yeah,
I feel like
truthfully
it was kind of
so.
a,
Truthfully
internal
so.
struggle for the Tigers.
But yet,
Truthfully so.
anyway, we were talking about, Notre Dame, they've really turned their season around since the 0-2 start. Tough losses to Marshall, Ohio State, and a really down Stanford team this year. But, this is probably their best win of the season. Most impressive showing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, Marcus Freeman has his guys rolling right now, for sure.
Absolutely. I think this also helps remove some question marks that might have been on Marcus Freeman's head, as them saying, this guy's he's a player's coach.
Marcus
You know what I'm
Fraud.
saying? He's a player's guy. He's not, he doesn't have the scheming and the football knowledge to get them to where they need to be and stuff. But I think this game helps him silence some of those doubters and some of the haters that he had coming into this, because that Notre Dame team looks like they're really rolling right now. They look like they're ready to take the second half of the season by the balls per se and move forward.
Yeah, they got a big game at the end of the season against USC. That'll be a big game. Both teams are looking to
Huge game for USC.
Yeah, huge game for both teams, really. But anyway, let's get to another game. Another top 10 matchup. LSU 32, Alabama 31 in overtime in Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly calls the game-winning 2-point conversion to send the Tigers to victory. Another field storming. First win for Brian Kelly against Nick Saban in Alabama.
It's massive, man. It just shows, the 2-point conversion really just shows a lot of guts. And
Brian Kelly's got the church bells between his legs.
Oh, truthfully so.
It just shows a lot of pride in his players and a lot of trust.
Mm-hmm.
That, you guys are going to get it done on this 2-point conversion. Is beat Nick Saban, slay the dragon, Bama. So
big rivalry win.
Yeah, for sure. Huge rivalry win in Baton Rouge. I said in the last episode anything can happen there. We really expected Alabama to have kind of a bounce back game against LSU after they lost to Tennessee, and we did not really see that. We saw an evenly fought game across the board that took overtime to determine a winner. So
yeah, I have to talk about my faults in believing that Alabama was going to come in and wash that LSU team, but that is not the case. Jaden Daniels looks phenomenal in LSU uniform. His ability to move in the pocket and make plays with his legs has proven to keep LSU kind of afloat this year. His playmaking ability is phenomenal. He looks great. They look in end season form. Brian Kelly's got them playing at the highest caliber they can be. They're in the driver's seat in the SEC West. At this point, it's a good time to be an LSU fan. You're rocking, you're rolling, and you're looking at a potential opportunity if you win the SEC. Riding out the schedule and playing a really tough Georgia team. I mean, you're putting yourself in a really nice spot coming down the end of the year.
Just imagine that scenario in the SEC if LSU manages to get it done and plays Georgia in the SEC championship game and wins that game. You wouldn't have a single undefeated team left in the SEC. What would even happen?
And what would you do with LSU?
Exactly
The two-loss team, but they're an SEC champion.
With the
what do you do?
Champion, 2-loss LSU, would you put a 1-loss Georgia non-champion in over them? It's just this weekend really shook up the college football landscape like crazy, and that's why we felt like we had to deliver a college football exclusive to you guys.
I wanted to touch on Alabama a little bit more. A lot of the questions we had about their team, they've continued to pop their head up in these road games like this. Obviously, their receivers have not been what they have been in the past, with guys like Jerry Jeudy and, Henry Ruggs and Devontae Smith, no less. And, they don't really have that premier receiver. We thought Jermaine Burton could maybe be that guy. He's been a little disappointing. We saw Ja'Cory Brooks step up. He had a good game last night, about 100 yards receiving, touchdown. But, obviously, they've kind of been relying on the Bryce Young hero ball, and he's been good enough to get them to where they need to be. But tonight, those weak spots for them really kind of showed up, and Bryce Young was not really able to deliver. Or I should say, I guess their defense was not able to deliver and shut the door on this LSU team, who doesn't really have a ton of offensive weapons outside of their quarterback.
Absolutely, and I also want to speak on. What we haven't seen from a Nick Saban team in a long time, but penalties have plagued this Alabama team all year long. We saw them, hurt themselves in the Tennessee game with quite a few penalties, a lot of discipline penalties, false starts, offsides. I mean, pass interferences on plays that might not even, require you to be in that situation. I mean, we saw them almost lose a game to Texas A&M because they plagued themselves with penalties. The final drive, multiple pass interferences.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the least disciplined Alabama teams we have seen in ages. I mean, Nick Saban is known for continuously having his guys ready to go, playing at the highest level. I mean, basically being NFL type competition guys. And I mean, this is a group that is obviously having a hard time being disciplined and staying, with the Nick Saban program because we don't see Alabama make mistakes like this. This is unlike them.
Unheard of.
This is unlike them, especially in recent history.
You have 9 penalties for 92 yards last night, just continuing the trend, like you were saying. Kind of, really unexpected, really, to see a Nick Saban team be this undisciplined.
Absolutely.
But, Alabama, they have a big game next week and traveling to Ole Miss, who also is tied with LSU for first place in the SEC West right now.
Huge SEC West matchup.
Alabama's got to win that game if they want to have any chance of making it to Atlanta.
Yeah.
If they lose that game in Oxford, we can officially count them out.
LSU is truly in the driver's seat with the win over Ole Miss.
And they play Arkansas.
That's my thing is if Ole Miss thinks they want to stay here, they've really got to go in next weekend and they've got to get business done because this is their year right here. If you don't win this game, you might as well count your playoff out of there.
LSU, we just got to talk about how under the radar they've been and how they've really improved since week 0. They just came in, just beat Alabama after, kind of not seeming very, it was just like the off-season antics really that really got a lot of people, scratching their heads on this LSU team. The tacky recruiting videos and
with Brian
the fake
Kelly.
accent. Brian Kelly kind of brought a lot of unwanted. Attention to Baton Rouge in the offseason, kind of, I don't know, a distraction of sorts.
No, for sure. There was a lot of questions, I know, from national media types. They were questioning, is Brian Kelly, a guy from the Midwest, really the right fit for an SEC job? And he's really answered those questions. And
it sure looks like it.
He has his guys playing their best ball right now. And this is year 1 for him only. And, we've seen some of these other year 1 coaches, they're not doing too hot. Billy Napier at Florida being an example. And at LSU they're rolling right now.
Absolutely.
It's a massive program win for LSU under Brian Kelly, brand new regime in Baton Rouge.
Let's talk about another program win. Michigan State 23, Illinois 15. Spartans, after, obviously that mess from last weekend, they have put that behind them and they are ready to go. There were questions about, what kind of culture is Mel Tucker instilling at Michigan State, and I think this win in Champaign was a big-time culture-defining program win for them, especially being down so many starters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I had spoken on it before, but I don't know if this is pat on the back, kudos Spartans, or if this is how terrible is the Big Ten West. I mean, we talked on it before. Last team in the Big Ten East walks into a enemy environment. And, Champaign and Illinois as the leader of the Big Ten West, the driver's seat for the Big Ten championship team, and they lose a game which they were favored 17.5 points.
It's crazy.
And they didn't even put up 17 points. I mean, it was honestly kind of ridiculous for Illinois. I mean, I think it was a really bad showing on their place. But, I mean, I got to speak on the Spartans. I think that the Spartan defense really answered the bell this year, losing a guy like Jacoby Windman, who was so essential kind of the Spartans' defensive success this week.
He was their star on defense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was early into the season speaks of being an All-American type guy, leading the nation in sacks and TFLs early in the year. But, I mean, like we were talking earlier, I think Amir Speed answered the bell, playing what if probably his best game of the season, and Cal Halliday stepping up and answering the bell in a Illinois heavy run offense, kind of being able to be that run stuffer. But huge win for the Spartans to keep their bowl eligibility. I think the Spartans are now use that momentum to kind of roll forward, hopefully on this last couple of games of the season and push for a nice bowl. Something that might not be the bowl you looked for going into the season, but at least a bowl is a bowl. It's better than being at home in December.
Yeah, it's a big-time win for them. Anyway, we want to get to a couple other games here. I want to talk about a team, kind of a sleeper team really out of the ACC, and that's the Tar Heels of North Carolina. I don't know if you guys have heard of their quarterback. This guy, his name is Drake May, freshman quarterback, and he is putting up some Heisman-type numbers. I mean, he had 300 yards the other night against Virginia, 75 yards rushing, 3 total touchdowns. I mean, their receiving core is outstanding. They got Josh Downs, 15 catches, 170 yards against Virginia. And, I mean, they're 8-1 right now in the Coastal Division in the ACC. They're kind of on a collision course right now for Clemson in the ACC Championship. But if North Carolina can take care of business the rest of the way, I think they have a chance for possibly a playoff berth.
Absolutely. And shout out to Mac Brown, getting it done there. People are questioning Mac Brown, obviously, these last couple of years and such with
Sam Howell
and that. But they've answered the bell this year and really gotten stuff done down the line. And Mac Brown, who obviously, I mean, we don't know if he's coming to the end of his career, but he's obviously on the older side of things. I mean, it's good to see that he's able to put this program in a position to really be, a dominant force in the college football world this year.
He's got a national championship pedigree. I mean, we saw what he used to do with Texas back in the day. With those Vince Young-led Texas Longhorns teams.
Mm-hmm.
You talking about Drake May having a Heisman-like season as a freshman quarterback. He was 26 for 37 with almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown.
Mm-hmm. That's
incredible. And Josh Downs is an elite receiver, 15 receptions, 166 yards and a touchdown as well. That's a very deadly combo. Those guys can definitely turn some heads in the ACC. And
North Carolina, their only losses to Notre Dame, like we were talking about. I mean, I don't know if their resume would allow them to be in the playoff as an ACC champion, but I think it's something that is a possibility. Really. Yeah. I'm not sure what they're going to be ranked this upcoming weekend, but 8-1, they're looking good right now.
They have the same loss as Clemson. I mean, obviously
that is true.
That Clemson Tiger logo, turns the heads of the committee. Obviously,
it's a moneymaker.
It's a big moneymaker, big market, if you want to call it that. But they just got beat by Notre Dame. It's the same loss UNC has. Those teams might meet in the ACC championship game, and this very good chance.
Winner could go to the playoff. Who knows?
Like we mentioned before, It's going to be a cluster of 1-loss teams fighting for that 4 spot, and honestly, that 3 spot now that Clemson has pretty much surrendered that. losing this game. So it's really gonna come down to, in my opinion, Georgia, Ohio State, and everyone else.
Yep. Let's get to the third field storming of the day. Oklahoma State 16, Kansas Jayhawks 37.
What is happening in
Oklahoma State's season is kind of the bottom's falling out a little bit. I know Spencer Sanders did not play in this game, but I mean, they weren't even competitive. They got beat by 20, 21 points. I mean, it's a tough loss.
And backup quarterback at
and
Kansas,
I mean,
too.
you can't talk enough about the job Lance Leipold has done at Kansas. In year one, this is a program that hasn't won more than 4 games since 2008.
Yep.
And that was the year their last made a bowl game in 2008, Orange Bowl, and I mean, he's done an incredible job. I think you'll look at him as, a potential, guy for some of these big time openings in this college football, this carousel, this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State, man, their season's probably about over, I would think. I think they're looking to try to, play into a decent bowl game, I would say.
At best.
You got 2. I mean, I wouldn't want to call the Kansas loss necessarily pathetic, quote unquote. But I mean, you don't got the star quarterback at Kansas anymore. You're playing against a backup.
Yeah, Jason Bean had another good game. 203 yards passing, 100 yards on the ground,
and
2 total touchdowns.
You're getting beat like that 2 weeks in a row. It just raised some question marks for Mike Gundy and the boys over there at Oklahoma State.
I want to touch on Kansas's running back. This guy, he had 224 yards on the ground and another 110 through the air. It's 334 all-purpose yards. He's a big game for him. Helped leading his team to bowl eligibility, like I said, for the first time since 2008.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, you really... We had question marks on that Oklahoma State defense, but I think this week just kind of shores them up, is that this Oklahoma State defense is proving to be one of the worst in the country.
Yeah.
And on the, I think in the secondary is one thing, but on the ground too. I mean, I think that this Oklahoma State defense, after allowing 48 unanswered last week, coming in here and allowing 37 on a backup quarterback kind of thing, is, I mean, you're not down a lot of starters. It's not like you're missing a lot of big pieces on defense. I think this is just for Gundy. This is a real, you got to go into practice this week and be like, hey, we something's wrong. We got to change something, because this is,
for sure.
Your season's in jeopardy, and you got to make a change now.
Yep, they gave up 351 yards on the ground, 7.6 yards per carry. That's
awful. That's unacceptable.
You can't win a game that way.
They're at 2nd and 3 every time they snap every first down.
Absolutely, and as a top 25 team, that's unacceptable.
Yeah,
you're holding yourself to a standard of where you want to be a championship program, and you can't. You can't allow stuff like that to happen.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, they had those Big 12 title aspirations coming in, especially with
just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, with OU being
2 weeks ago.
Not what they historically have been. Texas has been off and on. We'll talk about them a little bit later, but
this Oklahoma State team really, it seemed like they were in the driver's seat in the Big 12
We all
until
thought.
2 weeks ago, until they lost to Kansas State, and now TCU is kind of taking some of their limelight.
Yeah, TCU, like I said, we'll touch on them a little bit later as well, but pandemonium in the Big 12, to say the least.
Yes,
yeah, for sure.
Say the least.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it is.
We can switch gears to the Ohio State Northwestern game. I don't believe we spoke on that yet. The Buckeyes really didn't perform at as high of a clip as we were kind of expecting in this game, coming in and playing a 1-7 opponent, in Evanston, to play Northwestern. I don't know. I mean, the wind.
The weather had a big factor in this game for sure.
Truthfully.
I mean, C.J. Stroud had more rushing yards than he did passing yards. I mean, I think he had 79 on the ground and like 74 through the air. So obviously, neither team was really getting it done through the air in the kind of conditions that that there was in Chicago, typical Chicago weather this time of year.
You can't blame it. I mean, it's 40 mile per hour wind gusts is just. I mean, you're not going to be able to pass the ball efficiently in that type of weather conditions. That being said, they probably they have an elite back in Trevion Henderson in that backfield that you would have expected them to go to early and often, and they were in a dogfight through 3.5 quarters with Northwestern.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure is how Ohio State does in the weather conditions. That could possibly be an X factor down the line. Possibly that we're looking toward that last week of the season in the Big Ten. With obviously Michigan coming to Columbus. You
would think that they'd perform better in the elements, especially being playing a Big Ten schedule.
I mean, yeah, they got a lot of guys, from the South. They're not used to this conditions, but you find a way to win, and that's all that matters. You live to fight another week, and that's what they're looking to do.
We saw them struggle in conditions last season in Ann Arbor as well.
I mean, you guys speak to though. It is disappointing to open up as a 38-point favorite in this game and to score, only win by 14, and which 7 came very late in that game. But I don't know. I keep an eye out for that Ohio State game. That Ohio State team, actually.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just something to note. I'm not going to, try to, jump to conclusions too fast in a game like that. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald usually gets his guys ready to play, historically. This season's kind of been not very kind to them.
Another tough season for the Cats.
Yeah. I mean, this is a team that, was Big Ten championship capable. 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a program that, they've seen success and they, they can handle, they can handle these big games, but this season it has not been like that. So it's very, very something to note about the Buckeyes.
Yeah, let's talk about the Pac-12 really quick. We kind of got a bit of a logjam in the Pac-12, guys. We got really 4 to 5 teams really that any of them really could be Pac-12 champions, and obviously with UCLA, USC, Utah,
and Oregon.
Yeah, and Oregon. I can't forget Oregon, and then Washington also.
That's your pick.
Yeah, really. There's really a quietly deep Pac-12 this year, and I think a much improved Pac-12 for and I mean, the Pac-12, they're not going to be what we know in a couple years, but good season so far in the Pac-12. It's going to be interesting every single night from here on out.
I think this is the first time in a while that we've really seen a good, spread of teams fighting for that top spot in the Pac-12. I feel like usually it's extremely top heavy with your Oregons
and your Utahs.
Yeah, Oregon and Utah just kind of dominating that conference. But with the
Washington had their run with Chris Peterson too a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's true. They did make the playoff. But you got UCLA led Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Zach Charbonnet on that team. They've had a fantastic season. USC obviously with Lincoln Riley coming to town and Caleb Williams at the helm have also had a good season.
And Jordan Addison.
Yeah, Jordan Addison.
And Blitnikoff winner Jordan Addison.
Absolutely.
So you got a lot of talent dispersed within that conference. Obviously, you got USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten 2024, I believe.
It is crazy. Yeah.
So that's gonna shake up the Pac-12, but we can enjoy it while we have it. We like Jack mentioned, we kind of have a big race for number 1 in that conference. You had Oregon took care of business against Colorado, 49-10. USC they had kind of more of a game that we expected to be a blowout, but they had a dogfight with Cal, another team that played Notre Dame well earlier in the year. They won that game 41-35. UCLA handled business against Arizona State, 50-36. And Utah, 45-20 over Arizona at home. Just all the top teams in that conference really handled business this week, kind of as expected.
Washington got a big win too.
Yes, Washington. I'm looking for them right now.
A tough win against Oregon State.
Yes, that is another.
They were down, kind of a small comeback in the
game-winning field goal.
Yeah,
that's a formidable opponent in that conference as well. They've been very good.
Ranked 23rd in the college football playoffs. So the first initial ranking here, a 6-2 Oregon State team who with a win against Washington might have put themselves in a situation where you could question, what could they do? Kind of control their own destiny in there. But obviously. With that loss, I think that kind of is a setback for them in the Pac-12. I think that Washington kind of takes their places, putting themselves in their own driver's seat to what the future is for them. But
I believe I read it was Oregon State's first time ever being added on into the CFP rankings.
I believe so.
Since they've been in existence, so that's nice for that program to get
Washington.
a ranking.
Washington has a big game, I think, in Eugene against Oregon this Saturday. That'll be a big game.
That's going to be massive for the implications of the Pac-12. If any of those teams want a shot at making the playoff, that's a very interesting game that we got to keep on our radar.
Yeah, pretty much covered the Pac-12 good. Another game, over this past weekend was the Texas Longhorns. They took care of business against a red-hot Kansas State team.
Oh, yeah.
They dominated Oklahoma State last week, 48-0, and Texas handled them, really. Yeah, I mean, I think Quinn Ewers, he had a good game from what I've seen, and they have a talented wide receiving core with Xavier Worthy. He's a big time player.
Oh yeah,
Truthfully.
was it Adrian Martinez back for this game or no? I did not get a chance to watch.
I believe so, yes. And I don't know, maybe him being back, maybe he had a little bit of rust still.
Mhm.
I'm not really sure, but I wanted to note that because we were all picking against Texas. We all thought Kansas State, we thought they were gonna roll, and we thought they were gonna take care of business against a struggling Texas team. But big time win for Texas and Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, that Kansas State team was just really hot coming into this game. It's hard to overlook that, but
Yeah, and they got Deuce Vaughn in the backfield too.
Exactly.
You never can count him out.
And obviously it's going to be easy to pick against this Texas team. When you got Adrian Martinez, a very talented quarterback, returning to the other side of the ball. But Texas managed to get it done and win this game against all of our prediction. I don't know.
Yeah, I want to speak too on Bijan Robinson here for making a little bit of Texas history as he is the first Texas player to rush for back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons since Vince Young back in the day there. So Bijan kind of putting a stamp on Texas history for himself there and kind of stapling what he's done this season kind of in a high fashion against a highly touted opponent. So, this Texas team won't seem to go away, man. They just, every time they kind of disappoint, they show back up with another solid win. So,
they had injuries, man. I mean, you gotta give those.
With Quinn Ewers being out, that's a huge hit to your team.
That's not the same team with Hudson Card at quarterback as it is with Quinn Ewers.
Oh, absolutely.
And that guy, he's a very good quarterback.
This Texas team has some weapons. It'll be interesting to see if Bijan returns for another season, because if he does, this team could make some serious noise in the Big 12 next season.
That would be massive
with
for
Xavier
Texas.
Worthy and Quinn Ewers coming back. And man, I mean, and their defense, they got a lot of young guys on their defense too. So
their defense performed very well against that Alabama team earlier in the season. They kind of held Bryce Young and really made that a ball game. So that's something.
I think things are really looking up for Texas
for sure.
I think Steve Sarkisian's going to do really good things there.
For sure.
I mean, let's touch on the Syracuse-Pittsburgh game real quick. I mean, honestly, Syracuse on a treacherous slope downward, losing 3 straight games here.
Sean Tucker is not pleased.
No, absolutely. He's far from pleased. He's actually angered with his performance
Probably
recently.
one of his worst performances to date.
Absolutely.
And I can't remember his exact splits, but I saw him earlier. Let me look these up real quick for him.
And Pat Narduzzi, man, getting a nice win for him.
3rd straight loss for the Orange now.
10 carries on 19 yards on 10 carries.
Yeah,
that's
awful.
Never gonna get
awful.
No.
Pat Narduzzi with a big win for his team.
This game really, I mean, the stats of this game kind of show a sloppy game. I mean,
great defensive battle.
Exactly.
I think is what we should be saying.
That's true. We can mention that. I mean, the Syracuse quarterback going 8 for 23 is just.
Yeah, it's not a great game. I'm assuming their starting quarterback must have gotten knocked out.
This is their backup quarterback.
I forget what his name was, but it's unfortunate for a Syracuse team that was 6-0 starting the season, and they've now dropped 3 straight.
Yes.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
And a nice win to help Pittsburgh maybe turn around their season a little bit here after, obviously being champions last year, ACC champions last year. So, it's a good, nice win to try to hopefully get Pat Narduzzi's team back on track to kind of move forward and look at getting obviously a bowl game at this point, being 5-4.
Yeah.
It'll be at NC State.
I was gonna say we hadn't spoken on the Wake Forest game this weekend.
NC State. With a backup quarterback, obviously Devin Leary injured, comes and handles business against Wake Forest, which is a team that we were expecting to compete for that ACC. With Sam Hartman.
This NC State team, they got a lot of heart, I guess is the one way to say it. Starting QB goes down, and they've won a couple games now in these last couple of weeks with their backup quarterback, and they're just doing really good things down there in Raleigh.
Yeah.
This has been an NC State team that's kind of similar to Texas. They just won't seem to go away, man.
Yeah.
They lost a couple tough games earlier in the year, fell basically out of the AP poll, kind of, disappeared, and it just, as of recently reappeared back into the AP poll, kind of putting their name back into the the college football playoffs rankings here in the the lower end there, but they're starting to maybe at the end of their season pick it up and put themselves in a situation to get a nice bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. TCU continues to impress with a nice win over Texas Tech. 34-24.
TCU opens the week at number 4 in the AP poll.
I think it's well deserving.
Yeah, and
Very.
Max Duggan, another great performance. He was 12 for 23 with 195 yards passing and 2 touchdowns.
He's good on the rushing stats, bro.
Yeah,
Truly
took the
one of
rushing stats here.
One of the
Oh,
better,
man.
Yeah, big game.
Yeah, huge game on the ground for TCU for sure.
234 yards rushing.
Mhm.
I mean, 4.6 yards a carry. You're getting a 2nd and 5 every time you run the ball.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they were
Beautiful.
balling out for sure. So that's a nice win for TCU. They, like Jack mentioned, they catapulted to number 4 in the.
And well deserved too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see where they are in the college football playoff rankings. Obviously, we all think they should be ranked higher.
Oh,
yeah.
100%.
And especially with this Alabama loss, it'll be interesting to see if TCU is ahead of LSU or not. It'll be very interesting to see where the committee ranks LSU.
If we're talking about a team that's been historically disrespected by the committee, it's
TCU.
TCU for
Yeah,
sure. I
for
mean,
sure.
it's just
TCU.
we hope for a change in that. We want to see this TCU team be respected
Go
because they're
Horned
an
Frogs,
extremely
man.
talented team who we'd love to see. If they do end up running the table, that'd be awesome to see them make the playoffs.
I mean, not to mention that they're the sole driver of the Big 12
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. I mean, they are looking to be conference champions and an undefeated conference champion. I mean, in a Power 5, it's tough to tell a team like TCU no.
Exactly.
So I
It'd
mean,
have to be. It'd have to be very
obviously them in their driver's seat of their own destiny here. I think that TCU is a team to watch out for being maybe a playoff. I don't want to call them a dark horse, but almost a dark horse with the high overpowering SEC and Big Ten favor that we do see here.
Especially with the jumbling that's going on in the SEC right now, the cluster of teams now. And I think it opens a door for TCU to make the playoff if they do go undefeated
Absolutely.
as a conference champion. It'd be hard to leave them out, as we mentioned before. They'd kind of take a Clemson spot. In my opinion, too, with Clemson dropping this game to Notre Dame and potentially having a tough game against North Carolina on the horizon in their conference championship. So
Shout out Sonny Dykes, first-year head coach at TCU.
Absolutely.
Has his team at 9-0 right now.
Yeah.
They're rolling.
A front runner for coach of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I just got a question for you guys. I want to hear your takes on what's going on in College Station at the moment.
I think we're kind of seeing this. What we're seeing, kind of this new era of college football with this NIL stuff, and we're kind of.
Truthfully.
I think there's a lot of teams that are waiting and seeing really, what they want to do, how they want to tackle NIL, and I think they're kind of really watching what's going on in Texas A&M right now. I mean, I know that freshman class, 2 players in particular. I know they've had a couple of disciplinary issues going on there. I know they had a ton of players suspended this past weekend against Florida. They lost, fall to 3-6
Big.
now.
Didn't they have the flu too?
They did have the flu.
They might have. I know they had a couple players that were suspended.
It was
a couple
both.
weeks ago.
It was a combination of things. They lost. They were actually down. I believe it was 6 or 7 starters and I believe there were 6 or 7 backups.
And a lot of players
that were
out for this
not
game.
just like far backups, but twos. At that aspect.
I think we're seeing maybe a locker room that they don't really get along. A couple guys they maybe don't fit the culture. They're not as serious. They don't really love Texas A&M. They're there for
the money,
the cash.
Yeah.
They're there for the NIL deal. They're there to try to go to the NFL. They're not there to better the university. And I think we're going to see a mass exodus come transfer portal season.
Oh yeah.
Not
for sure.
just from Texas A&M, but college football wide. I think this is going to be an insane transfer portal year for sure.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have a lot of news to cover this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
That's for certain.
Oh, yeah, we're
And
gonna
I
be-
do think that you also got to question Jimbo Fisher at this point. I mean, Jimbo.
Especially his play calling.
Oh,
He's-
absolutely.
his-
Game management.
He's been the offensive coordinator there. He kind of has, been a little bit stubborn and,
Mm-hmm.
giving up his play calling duties. And it'll be interesting to see what he does in the offseason. If they do, outside hire, go for an offensive coordinator, it'll be interesting to see what happens and how he tries to, fix what, kind of has happened this year. It'll be interesting to see if they make a bowl game. As
Yeah,
well.
I also think it's inexcusable with the talent that he's proceeded to bring in year after year at this Texas A&M program, and the results are just non-existent. I mean, you can't go in with a team that's you know, respectively ranked 5 coming into the year just based on talent on the roster, and you proceed to win 7 and 5 or 7 games.
8 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're being paid much too much to be not successful the way you're expected. You're expected to win 9, 10, 11, 12 games with all that talent.
And, you know, their best season was the COVID season, 9 and 1. So I think their last really good run, Texas A&M, was when Johnny Manziel was in College Station.
Absolutely.
And I think we're, you know, obviously we're still waiting for Jimbo to flip that switch there. You know, we saw what he did at Florida State. You know, obviously he got them to a national championship, but we're still kind of waiting and seeing in College Station what happens and how Jimbo, you know, decides to fix this problem that he has going on right now.
I feel like we got to mention a team that we were just absolutely trashing
I would love
on
it.
the last episode of this podcast. The Iowa Hawkeyes, 24-3 over Purdue in a game where we were expecting Iowa to possibly be blanked in this game.
I love it.
Purdue had just a horrible performance in this game.
The win played a big factor for Aiden O'Connell
Mm-hmm.
and that Purdue passing game. I know O'Connell threw a number of interceptions. I think he was under 200 yards passing. But Spencer Petras, he played a quietly nice game.
Spencer
13 for 23
And
with 200 yards passing and 2 touchdowns.
The key was that 0 in the interception column. No interceptions for Spencer Petras.
Massive.
And he led his team to a big-time Big Ten West victory. You know, the running game helping out.
Yeah.
200 yards rushing from Keegan Johnson. I mean, Kirk Ferentz proving again that, you know, he's still here and he's still a good coach. And, you know, I think we were all kind of writing Iowa off, but the Iowa program, they do not seem to be looking that way. They're continuing as business as usual.
Oddly enough, for this Iowa Hawkeye team, they're pretty close in the Big Ten West race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with this win over Purdue, a 5-4 Iowa team is looking at having an opportunity to go to the Big Ten championship.
I don't even want to think about this
It's
team
unbelievable.
making it to Indianapolis this conference championship season.
It is quite amazing how terrible that conference is.
Cannot wait
The division, at least.
until the Big Ten picks up UCLA and USC and that division actually becomes somewhat competent.
It'd be interesting to see how they go with an alignment if they just completely scratch.
They could, honestly.
Completely scratch the divisions and
They
go
should
go to a pod system, or if they go to just, you know, no divisions and just do
protected rivalries.
The top 2 teams play for the conference championship like the Pac-12
That's the
has
way
done.
it should be.
And the Big 12 as well.
Yeah, the Big 12 is like that as well, but, you know, obviously we're still a couple years away from that, so we're not going to cover it too much because, you know, we'll cover it when the time comes.
I mean, hypotheticals.
I mean, I'd argue that the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, I'm assuming you guys would argue this as well, are all in the Eastern Division.
Always, every year.
Every year.
Every
it's
year.
Not
Wisconsin
anything.
needs to get their act together. Obviously, fired Paul Chryst a couple weeks ago, but
Bad
Wisconsin,
fire, in my opinion.
they're usually around the top of the conference. They've gone to a number of Big Ten championship games. Seems like all of them. When Iowa's not there or Northwestern's not there, it's the Badgers. But, you know, a lot of programs in the Big Ten are rebuilding. It seems like. I feel like the only 3 really are Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. I feel like everyone else needs to get their act together.
For sure.
I feel like, I mean, you can argue that the 4 best teams in the Big Ten have continuously been in the Big Ten East for years on years at this point. I mean, I would argue that Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are the true dominators of that conference in and out every single year for the last decade at least. So, you know, I'd like to pretend that the Big Ten West is not a competitor in any facet in that
It's definitely
conference.
the weakest division of any Power 5 conference.
Yeah, the Big Ten West is in absolute shambles. Truthfully.
Certainly, it's not competitive. I mean, it's just a bunch of bottom tier teams. Obviously, we just saw the last place team in the East take down the first place team in that division this week. So it's baffling that is a Power 5 division in one of the best conferences. Yeah, I feel like we touched on a lot of college football topics. We hope you guys enjoyed.
Yeah.
This was a college football exclusive.
I want to count. I want to mention some big win today for Detroit.
Yes,
taking down A-Rod.
Detroit
Yes, sir.
football.
Yeah, big win. We'll discuss this on a later show. We wanted this to just be a college football exclusive due to
the change in the landscape.
What a crazy week it's been. What a crazy week
it's been a wild one for sure.
And it's only getting started. It's going to get even crazier these next couple of weeks. With things heating up with all these one-loss teams, like we were saying. But we really just wanted to give our opinions on this crazy ass week in college football.
Yeah.
I mean, we already got you guys for an hour today.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap things up. We got big Sunday, so we got other things going on too. But
gotta watch the rest of the NFL slate so we can give you guys some good content.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, for us here, it was it's been a crazy week, but we're gonna call it a day here, guys.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, boys.
Signing off.
Peace out.